If you guys are just joining us, we've been going through a series called God View, and the basic idea of God View is that we need to have a correct view of who God is so that we can have a correct response to Him. So if we misunderstand something about God, we'll respond to Him incorrectly. And so this is week 3 of that series, God View, and I'm stoked to let you guys know that we have a guest today. My good friend JD is going to be leading us through the morning. So everybody give it up for JD. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Can you turn my light just a little bit? I feel like I'm staring at the sun. It's okay, whatever. I know you're there. If we could just pray really quick one more time, I'd appreciate it. And just bow your heads for a moment. God, thank you for this morning. I thank you for our perspective of you, God. I pray that through this message, Lord, you use this time, use these words and scripture and experiences, God, to bring about a better sense of who you are, God. But you continue to be and build upon and grow and change our perspective as we go through life, that you don't stay the same, God. As we move forward with you, even from this very day, God, that we continue to grow closer to you and that we're able to see what that looks like, Lord, as our perspective of you changes. God, we see you in all things, God, not just here Sunday morning or in our small groups, God, but in all things we get to see you. So thank you for that. We're going to pray. Amen. Thank you. For those of you who haven't met, my name is JD. Nice to meet you. For those of you I know, welcome back. Glad you guys are here today. I'm excited to be able to speak this morning on perspective and perspective of God. And when Drew asked me to speak on this, it was like one of those, like, what's your perspective of God? It's like, oh my gosh, where do I begin? It's so broad and so deep and far-reaching, and I think back, I can think of so many different experiences, but I kind of want to start, as my journey with God began. I was 9 years old in Sunday school here at Calvary a long time ago, and gained a lot of wisdom since then. Well, some, but it was an amazing experience. Even this past Monday, I had the Sunday school teacher, Muriel Latta, L-A-T-T-A. Muriel Latta led me to the Lord when I was 9 years old. She's like 83 now. Friend requested me on Facebook. I was like, no way. So I confirmed, and I was like, yeah, we can be friends still. But it's amazing to look back and just kind of see how God brings people back into our lives. And for me, at the age of 9, my perspective, of course, I think was much more limited than it is now. It's just in life experience, and you guys would agree, I'm sure, that as time has gone on in your life as a Christian, the more you experience, the more you've gotten to see God work, and you can start to say those things like, I saw God working in this place, and I hope that's a place that you're in now. It's not just like, oh, it just happened, it was just luck, good or bad. You know, those things don't just happen for no reason. It's because God's pointing us in a certain direction or helping us to grow through those circumstances. So at the ripe old age of 9, I accepted Christ into my heart. It was at a time of personal strife in my life. My parents were at the onset of their divorce. It was a time of wanting something that was solid and consistent and brought about a sense of peace in my life. But even then, it was still so limited. You know, my Sunday school experience was animal crackers and like little feltogram things you guys may have seen when you're in Sunday school, like little felt Jesus and like little sheep and stuff. And that was about it, you know. But as I got older, God began to change that perspective for me. And I imagine for some of us, we see God, if you have that image ready, it's like Santa Claus, like, this is what I want, God, this is what I need. Like, you know, you promised me I'm gonna get all this stuff and these things. And we kind of have these images in our mind of like who God is, and our perspective, I think, constantly changes. So it was kind of that's at least at the age of 9, that was my thinking. And even through that time, I mean, people are always trying to point out the advantages. It's like, well, it's not such a bad thing going through this experience, going through divorce. And you get to have 2 Christmases. It was like, sweet. Like, God gave even more of that image to me. It's like, you know, what I could get, it was about me. My existence as a Christian at that age was about me. It was about what I could get, what I could attain, the peace I could have, the things that could consume my life and would eventually. But moving forward, I think that's a lot of us, at least I did, at one point in my life, like, what am I praying for? I'm praying for stuff. I'm praying to get things. I'm praying for myself. It's very selfish perspective, but not unlike many people that I know and have known. But as I got older, as I moved into junior high and high school, God, in his passionate pursuit of me, used additional situations and circumstances and people. Beginning in middle school, some of you have shared the story. My middle school pastor, Mark Weston, asked if I would want to attend a week-long mission trip to serve in Mexico. I was like, sweet, I could go somewhere different, just to get away from home, to be out of the situation going on at home. But again, still kind of that selfish, like, I want to go, I want to do this. Not realizing God was going to continue to change and change my perception of him through that experience. So there I was 12 years old in Mexico with other junior hires in our church, and several other churches in California were gathered there for a week. It was a week to serve. It was a week to pour myself out, and that was something I wasn't really familiar with yet at the age of 12. And that experience began to transition in my heart, began to change my perspective of who God is and what he'd been doing to the people in that community in Cuernavaca, Mexico. And there he began to really grab hold of my heart and became less about what I wanted. My perspective was less focused on me and the things I was praying for myself and what God was going to use me for. And I think a lot of times we get confused, we get kind of, I don't know, maybe distracted by the fact that it's not up to us to do anything. Our perspective is still kind of on us. Instead of like, God, how can you use me in this community, in this world? And I know in this room, and sometimes I go off topic, I get off of my notes, but God's putting upon my heart, like even last Thursday when I spoke at Westlake High School, I know there's people in this room, and it isn't limited to one or two, but each person here has either gone through or is in the midst of a struggle, or if you're not, you will be. And that's not meant to scare you, but it's to say, where is your faith? What is your perspective of God now? Not when that time comes when you get that phone call. Not when you find out your parent lost a job, or that you're moving all of a sudden in the middle of high school. Where's your foundation now? What's your perspective of God now? And how do you find that? How do you find that perspective? Part of it's being here in this community. Part of it's being in a small group, like an ISI group during the week. A lot of it is with serving, and again, pouring yourself out will change your perspective. You begin to see how God works in other people. So Mark Weston was my middle school pastor. Moving on more into high school, I had leaders who poured into me throughout my high school career. Some of you guys know, may or may not know, but Tim Bjork was one of my leaders. For those of you who go to Oak, Sue Holtz-Snyder, this is H, was one of my leaders. And others. I had Joe and Angie Lynch were like Bible study leaders that I participated in like a weekly Bible study with them. Another one's Dan Smith, who's my high school pastor. Many of you guys know Connor, who's up here this morning. Connor's dad was a huge part in helping to shape and form that perspective of God for me and with me. And it was never like, you have to do this, this, and this. It was simply to love and to be present and to ask the questions that were maybe difficult. What's going on in your life? And how often do we get asked the question, how are you? Especially at school. How are you? Good. How many of us lie when we say that? I do. I feel like I do. I'm good. Somebody asked me that yesterday, how are you? I can give you the 1 second good, or if you have 10 minutes, I can tell you, some challenges going on right now in my life. But God's working through those situations, those people, those circumstances in my life to give me a perspective of who he is and how he's working. And that's sweet. It's a sweet place to be because you're trusting God with each day, with each breath. You didn't wake up this morning because you have the right to wake up. You woke up this morning because God allowed you to be here this morning. I don't know if we see God like that sometimes. We see God as either Santa Claus or some distant being who's out there and making our life more difficult, more challenging. But now is the one who wants to restore and refine and help us to grow, to be able to use in situations like, if you've ever gone through a challenging situation and someone's come alongside you and said, I know what that's like, I've been there, if you want to talk about it. That's God working. That's not just somebody who just happens to care. God's working in your life. So we can choose to accept those circumstances and situations as opportunities to grow and to lead others into a place of peace and who God is and how he works. Or we can say, oh, it's just bad luck. That's just the way it is. Or, oh, that's just so lucky how that happened. No, God's ordained every day for you, each and every one of you. The sooner you hold fast to that, the sooner your life will be able to see a perspective of God that is ever changing, ever growing. And that perspective begins to widen, your perspective, your horizon of who God is. Ever growing. It should never stop changing and growing.